So in relation to maths, do you think there's any change, or do you think it's just as simple as that they're just going to get bigger? Do you think their needs are going to get more complicated, or do you just see them as what currently is required?
Well, I think everyone would benefit from clearer guidance from the government on what it is they actually intend to do. I mean, you see lots of chatter as to yes, we're continuing with the academisation programme. I mean, you'll remember a few years ago they talked about having multi-academy trusts at around 50 schools per multi-academy trust, and that being about the limit of where a multi-academy trust might grow to. I don't know whether they're planning to stick to that. I think we've definitely seen more trusts amalgamate. Certainly, the smaller trusts amalgamating together. I mean, statistically, there are less single academy trusts now than there ever have been, as they all start to form wider trusts. But also, there are more schools now that are academised. So we're nearing what 50% of the estate of the schools in the UK that are now academised or part of that programme. So I think it's going to continue. I don't think anybody's going to change that. Certainly not with the current party in politics. I think I don't think the needs have become more complex. I would say that the maturity level of their organisation is now demanding more from their software and from their technology, but also demanding more from what's around them. And again, part of that is driven by the impact of COVID and the pressures that have come along. But part of it is just that maturity curve, which you see in lots of sectors. So if we go back to the beginning, multi-academy trusts first started investing in their finance systems and making sure their organisation was structured through, and then they started centralising their procurement. Then quite a few now are focusing on centralised HR and payroll platforms and managed services around payroll and aggregated HR products, and maybe MIS is that kind of next revolution where they aggregate and consolidate their MIS solution as well. But it's a maturity curve. I mean, you couldn't do them all at once. I shouldn't do them all at once. I mean, that would be chaos, I would imagine, for most businesses, let alone schools that are trying to educate as well at the same time. And so I think I don't think the needs have changed. I just think there's a greater expectation now that some of those more essential foundations are in place, and therefore it's what do you do next? How do you drive that continuous improvement through the organisation of your multi-academy trust as well as through your teaching processes?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's quite interesting. I think there is there's probably a more awareness now about what information is available to them. So I think there will be a more demand. I agree. I don't think necessarily the needs have changed, but you can see demand changing in the sense of we want to be able to draw this data from multiple different sources that we have, like HR, finance, MIS, and so on, because actually we do now understand that we can potentially get this sort of type of information out. So I think there is definitely a move slightly, a little bit like you said with COVID and learning. You know, talking to maths, they're now sort of and schools, they like the idea that basically potentially they can have blended teaching within a school. When a child goes and potentially breaks a leg, which obviously nobody wants a child to do, but they're in hospital or something, they can actually continue their learning in hospital as well as the children in the classroom, so they can, there's an alignment there, so they're not missing out on anything, which is great. Is one of the positives of what's happened with COVID, I think.
Yeah, and if most kids, like my kids, have also spotted that it's probably the end of snow days as well, which they're gutted at, and does that mean we'll never get a snow day again, Dad? Yeah, it probably does. You'll probably have to, unless the snow takes out the internet. All right, that's what I need to plan for then, Dad. Is it? Yeah.
I think you might just put that thought in their heads. There's a slight unplugging of the internet.
Indeed. So I think you're right. I think that blended learning, we did another survey that we did recently around parents' evening manager or parents' evening management, and most schools that we surveyed are planning to do more parents' evenings, but do one a term now rather than the twice a year, planning to have them blended. So some will be on site and some will be via the video mechanisms that we've seen come out over the last 12, 12 to 18 months. And again, it's a really good example of a massive change in the use of technology, right? 18 months ago, we ran a survey saying, how do you fancy doing one-to-one video conversations with parents? And schools were pretty anti that in their response back to us and saying, not really very interested. Now we're in a completely different place, driven by circumstances, but also driven by actually the great adoption of teachers and parents and educators to adopt some new technology, use it in a different format, and drive up parental engagement. I mean, if of any of the things that you and I and others have tried to do on increasing parental engagement in the last 5 years, probably the biggest single bump that we've had in parental engagement is video parenting managers. More people now connect at a time that suits them without having to do all the traveling, without the fear of going into school and all those other things that prevent people getting connected with what's going on in their child's education. So I think massive opportunity continues to come from the times that we're in, but also massive opportunity still in front of us to take that maturity model and to build better technology and to bring some of that stuff closer to the fingertips of the people needing it on a day-to-day basis, rather than the time challenge that we talked about before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that, it's interesting in the sense of you're almost moving towards more individualized learning. That's what you're effectively doing. You're starting to move there, which I know we've been talking about it for, and the industry has been talking about it for, probably a good decade. But actually, yeah, we're starting to move towards more individualized learning the more technology gets used.
Yeah.
Cool. One of the things that obviously came up from your Jim Knight seminar, which it was really interesting and actually leads quite nicely on from what we've just been talking about, is that sort of piece on innovation. And I think the term is used, probably overused a little bit sometimes, and including for myself, I might add. I know I've definitely banged the drum of saying, I think EdTech needs to be more innovative. They're not using the latest technology, which I think is still the case. However, the one thing I think what he mentioned, and I think is really interesting, is that innovation obviously happens and actually you did as well, sorry. Both of you mentioned that innovation is not just purely about new technology. Sometimes it's about grabbing hold of what you've got and then using it in an innovative way. And actually teachers, do that normally anyway in the classroom. They're always trying to innovate, to try and understand how they can, change their change their teaching style to suit the children, within their care. But I thought it's quite an interesting concept. I think it's quite interesting how that, what he mentioned. But I'll be quite interested to understand, from a sort of, I suppose, from yourself, so from a technological perspective, where do you see the innovation coming in now, and what do you think is important? But also where people might potentially start using solutions in a better way, more innovative way, I suppose, as far as your solutions are concerned.
Yeah, okay. We think of innovation in two different ways here, and actively encourage the teams that are building software to think this way. So there is innovation that comes from how do I expand someone's ideas and understanding of the art of the possible today, right? So quite often we'll pick on something that's not in the EdTech space. Everybody talks about Excel and goes, right, Excel, everybody uses 5% of it. There's very few of us that know how to write macros, and there's some of the super complicated functionality that's in Excel. And even if we did know how to do that, chances of then somebody else being able to pick it up and run with it is just unlikely, right? It's too hard. There's not enough people doing it. But Excel is a powerful tool. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody can do the basic things that they need to do in it. Some of us are better than others. And when you show someone how to do something in Excel that they don't know how to do before, and you make their life easier, it still 20, 30 years on makes their faces light up and go, oh, brilliant, that's excellent. I'm super, super happy someone showed me how to do that. And now I'm going to use that, and they then use their VLOOKUPs or their pivot tables or the auto-generated graphs or whatever it is in Excel. And I think
absolutely.
I think there's an element of that we need to do in promoting what's the art of the possible with the today, and it's not innovation in its traditional sense. It's more expanding people's horizons, as I said, and making them aware. So we do lots more now in our software with analytics to see what parts of the software people are using, to nudge them across to bits of the software they might not have used before, to do inbuilt tutorials to make it easy for them to use that bit of the software, to have some explanation of, did you know this is possible as a result of using this part of the software. There's a continuous need to remind bits of people that are forgotten, and to expand that horizon to show just the art of the possible within the current software. I mean, we were doing a demo of some of the assessment capability in EdGen the other day, and it's there, it's existing functionality. There's nothing new from a technology point of view, but the group that we were sat in front of went, in the last 2 hours, you've moved me forward 5 years.
Amazing.
And so quotes like that, and the ability to get that, oh my god, that's brilliant, and that's available to me now, I think is one part of the innovation story, one part of the, actually, let's just make sure people are really aware of what is possible and what is available and what is capable in the existing systems. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is proper innovation, where actually you want to take something and be a bit disruptive with it. Video Parents Evening is probably a good example of that, where someone's combined some tech, and most innovation comes from combining things that exist into a slightly new format, and then presenting it back to a different group of people, where we are looking at some of the underlying technology that we've now got running for aggregated reporting. There's some new technology out there that we're using that allows us to do real-time reporting across as many schools as you like. So none of this waiting 24 hours for your data, none of this waiting until the afternoon to get consolidated reports. Actually, real-time reporting on everything that's going through. That was horribly expensive, difficult to do even 3 years ago, in any level of detail and granularity. Now it's relatively cheap to do, and relatively cheap to do it at scale. And so some of that innovation is about seeing what's going on in the tech space, and then using that and bringing it in and adopting it and making it available. And then I think arguably there's then something that's in between the two, which we've talked about on our website, we've talked about in the recent webinars and with you before, around the integration that then comes. So part of expanding the art of the possible is actually by making data consistently available across all of the products that we have, and therefore from that then sparks new ideas and new interests, and again, I can in a few minutes we can talk about EdGen and the dashboards that we put in there that are certainly delighting all the customers that we've shown it to so far, and making a difference, not because yes there's a bit of new technology in there, but again, back to the maturity curve of actually organizations are demanding more. So how do we then meet and rise to those demands, which then begats more ideas and more interest in what we're doing, and therefore drives a virtuous process between us, the people that create the software, the educators that are needing to use it on a day-to-day basis, and then this thought leadership piece that we talked about at the very beginning, and how we combine all of those three things to really accelerate what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really interesting. No, I totally agree with you. I think, I think the art of the possible, I think, is a really important terminology, piece of terminology, because I think, it's a good way of explaining how people should be being tried to use. Again, it still comes back to need, and it still comes back to, but the trouble is sometimes I think, even though when there is a need, people don't understand what potentially they can do to resolve and solve that problem. And I think it's down to companies like yourselves, as well as all the other people around, like support teams and anybody else who's interacting, to basically try and help and solve that problem.